Hey everybody, welcome to Local Business Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Case, and I'm on a mission to help you. Every week, we're going to be talking to local business owners and experts to get their best tips, tricks, and hacks to grow your business. This show is designed to teach you, inspire you, and motivate you to take massive action and start to build your future-proof business. Whether you're just starting off or you're taking your existing business to the next level, this episode is for you. So let's get started. Hey, local business hackers. I'm your host, Carl Case, head of business development at Referrizer, joined today by a super special guest, Tony Zaccario, president and CEO of Stretch Zone. Tony, welcome to Local Business Hacks, man.
How you doing, Carl? Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's a beautiful day in sunny South Florida. I know you get to enjoy that as well. So, Tony, obviously you don't become an overnight sensation as the president and CEO of, I'd say, the largest growing recovery studio in America. Tell me about your journey and how you got here.
Yeah, no, listen, Stretch Zone obviously started a little bit further back around 2015 is when we opened up our first storefront. Didn't start franchising until 2017. And prior to that, my partner and founder, Jordan Gold, kind of pioneered the practitioner-assisted stretching movement. And when we brought that to the masses with this first storefront in 2015, it's crazy to think that from 2015 to now, we'd be at 250 locations, growing about 2 to 3 locations a week, especially we didn't start franchising until 2017. So to have that kind of growth without a single store failure over the past, really 6 years franchising it's been a incredible journey. And I was fortunate to find this opportunity and obviously meet the people I have along the way, including our great franchisees, as well as Jordan. And so I stumbled on this around store 4, store 5, and have helped create this incredible family ever since.
Well, welcome to the boutique fitness space.
Yeah.
Tony, talk to me a little bit about your background and what got you to this position inside of Stretch Zone.
Yeah, so background, born and raised in Florida. So I know we're talking about the great weather. I must say that 55 degrees is a little bit chilly for my blood, being a native Floridian. But anyway, so I was born and raised in Florida, went to University of Florida, go Gators. After that, I always had the entrepreneurial spirit. And so for me personally, when I first came across Stretch Zone, I heard about, obviously, some of our differentiators, which I knew they had a patented strapping system developed by the founder, which obviously allows us to give the most effective and efficient stretch. And truly, nobody can do what we do. So I first heard that and then understood just how simplistic of the business model was, and more importantly, the difference and the tangible difference it was making in people's lives. I realized that my now partner, Jordan, was sitting on something pretty special. And I immediately felt that this is something that every community needed. I feel like this is something that everyone, and obviously assisted stretching, and the beauty about assisted stretching is that we're able to design programs specific to the goals or needs of any individual. And so when realizing that, coming to that realization, not only is there a demand across the country, if not the world, and starting to look at international markets, I thought it was very scalable. And it was something that we could easily wrap into a nice, succinct box that we could package and go ahead and provide to franchisees all across the country as good business opportunities and just a way to give back to their community.
Fast forward 200 locations later, I'm talking to the president of Stretch Zone. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
So, Tony, for people that haven't experienced their first stretch or Stretch Zone at all, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so if anyone's ever curious, our big mantra is first stretch has always been free. I always joke where I know that when you get off the table, you're going to feel a difference right away. But we always kind of joke, we're like, hey, don't take my word for it. Go ahead and try it out for yourself. And so whenever we open a location, however the location's been open for, how long it's been open for, is try the first stretch free. So you go to stretchzone.com, look for a location near to you, go ahead and get into a location. And I think you'll be surprised is just how specialized and unique it can be and tailored towards your needs and the program, whatever you might be trying to accomplish, and just the impact it's going to have on your life, even after that first stretch.
Me as a customer of Stretch Zone, I can second that. After my first stretch, I honestly didn't realize how badly I needed stretching in my life. So for those of you that haven't checked it out, stretchzone.com, get in there and experience it for yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's like whenever someone gets on the table for the first time, probably like yourself, you're active, you're talking about your fishing journeys, I'd say, before this. But when I first came to Stretch Zone, I used to be active on the weekends, whether it's be family, golf, whatever it might be. And to immediately think, man, Stretch Zone would be great for those who are active. And the answer is yes. But then you also remember that for a lot of our individuals, our average age is actually 45 and up. So with that, as much as you and I need it for our activity, there's a lot of people who come in with a simple goal of, hey, listen, I just want to get rid of some nagging sciatica pain or low back pain, sleep through the night. Something simple as I want to be able to put my shoes on by myself, because you lose a lot of that flexibility over time, and which is why one of our trademarks is stretch back the years, and that's what we're able to do for a lot of clients.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for that. I was unaware of how many people took advantage, how many pain points you really hit. That's incredible. So transitioning a little bit, obviously being Local Business Hacks as the podcast, as the president of Stretch Zone, I'm going to ask you, what are some tips that you have in regards to saving time in your day-to-day?
I'm big on plan your work and work your plan. And it's something that I talk about with my team all the time. You know, when you're kind of structuring out, so you had your macro goals, let's call it for the year, 2 years really ahead of time as far as what you want to accomplish, right? You boil it down to a quarter, you boil it down to a month. When it comes to a week, you need to have your week, if not weeks, planned out. So where you're really focused is execution from a day-to-day standpoint. Nothing ever goes to plan, for the record, by the way. And there's always going to be the wrenches and stuff you have to do. But when you're focusing on execution, more intentional, I think probably the simplest tip that I've heard over time and it's held true, if something can be accomplished in 5 minutes or less, do it. You see too many people, especially when people are a little bit more green in leadership, and they push off either tough conversations, tough decisions, tough calls they need to make, and they just kind of push it off. Or what can be a very mundane and menial task, they think of it as like, oh, that's simple, I'll get it done later, and then they forget about it or whatever it might be. So for me, it's kind of a steadfast rule. If it can be done in 5 minutes or less, likely a call, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But also, I think from my role now, where I sit now, if it's a decision that can be made in 5 minutes or less, let's go ahead and think it through, get the necessary feedback, loop in whoever needs to be looped in, and let's make that decision so you don't end up being the bottleneck in the organization.
I love that. Yeah, Tony Robbins 101. If it takes more than 5 minutes, we can plan it. If not, just get it done now. It's amazing how many tasks really we can get done in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, then the other one, and I don't know how many you're looking for, but here you go. The other one is don't meet to meet. That drives me nuts. And I'm not one of those on the end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, meetings are pointless, you don't need to have them. Meetings are necessary, in my mind, or what I believe they are, but don't just meet to meet. If there needs to be a purpose, there needs to be something you want to achieve and an objective to every single meeting, which has always been pretty helpful.
I love that. Amazing. Moving on to the next question. When we talk about competition, as Stretch Zone was the emerging brand in this space, you now start to see competition popping up all over the globe, trying to mimic the concept or do it in their own world. You know, what would you say is a tip when navigating through competition to be successful?
Yeah, I don't think anyone should shy away from competition. Competition is healthy. Competition is great for the industry. I remember the first time, being the pioneers when we first started, the first time I actually believe it was Massage Envy at the time, tried to launch a stretching program. And I remember actually feeling relieved because for us, it was a proof of concept, right? It was a validator. And we didn't have that early on. And now there's all kind of mom and pops, different competitions popping up out there. And what I always try to relate to my team and franchisees is, especially in our standpoint, right? When we have a patented tracking system, we have the only nationally recognized stretch training program, which are two major differentiators. When you have that leg up on competition, then what you need to focus on is internal, right? Don't shy away from it. Don't ignore it. Recognize there's competition out there, but ultimately, and whether you're able to have the differentiators or not, but if you focus on the execution, like, hey, listen, if we play our game to 100%, and if we execute on everything that we're supposed to execute on and flawless operational excellence, then it doesn't matter if competition's out there, right? And ultimately it boils down to like, listen, if we're going to operate this organization the best we can, and we're going to win the right way, which is why competition is always healthy. And I think, you know, my piece of advice for people that are worried about competition is you never punch down, right? You never badmouth a competitor. If anything, I tell clients all the time is, hey, try whoever, right? We have confidence in our units, and we have confidence in our franchisees and our service and our product. And should something fit you better, then so be it, right? And that's the beauty of obviously a great country that we live in, and obviously what's going to transpire no matter what, whether you like it or not, when there's going to be competition, because if you found something good enough, competition will likely always pop up, and that's the way it is.
That's awesome. I appreciate that, Tony. I'm gonna leave you with one that I think is really interesting, especially being in the position that you're in. What's something that you now know that Tony 5 years ago or even a year ago really wishes that you had in your toolkit?
I think it's not a toolkit. I think it's just more, and you hear this all the time when you're kind of growing and evolving professionally, personally, whatever it is. Trust your gut in a lot of regards, especially in business. It's your guts, especially when it comes to whether it's a business decision, business opportunity, an individual, a relationship with a vendor, whoever it might be, is like, if it doesn't pass the sniff test, there's probably good reason why. And especially with employment decisions, especially, right, that can be very hard for young leaders. And you might have something where, listen, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't look right, but they're saying the right things and everything checks out. And then fast forward a year and a half later, and it's like what you thought a year ago is spot on. So it kind of goes the whole mantra of like, hey, if it walks like duck, quacks like duck, it's probably a duck. So that's probably the one, I don't want to say tool, but I just think it's kind of a validator for those that are growing within organizations, especially leaders in organizations, is trust that gut and trust that sniffer, right? And just make sure everything passes the smell test. If it doesn't, then that is a red flag that you should take notice of and maybe dive a little deeper to figure out what exactly is going on.
I think that's great advice. I got to ask you, because I could see some emotions coming out when you were talking about that lesson that you learned. Do you mind sharing a story where you look back and you're like, man, I should have listened to my gut?
It's in franchising, especially, it happens a lot when you're with your early adopters. And there's a lot of franchisees that come on board, and we're an organic organization, right? We grew, and a lot of young franchises, you're needing every franchise fee you can at the very early days to clear payroll or whatever it might be. And you come across franchisees where it's like, I don't know if they're going to be as active as they say they're going to be, or there's just certain red flags that kind of show. And sometimes you turn a blind eye to them, which is why today and nowadays we're very, very, very focused on making sure that we find people that share our core values, that are really going to contribute to the culture that we've worked so hard to create and kind of ingrain throughout the entire system. But that's after a lot of hard lessons learned.
Yeah. Well, going back, my last question on the hard lessons learned, we talk about things that our younger self wishes that they knew in business. So keep in mind, our listeners are all over the health, wellness, and recovery space globally and all different aspects of their business. For people that are trying to create their own brand or are working in corporate America and want to get into a franchise or whatever that may be, personally for you, you're the president of Stretch Zone. So you have that title that a lot of people dream of and want to get to, of owning and operating, overseeing hundreds of locations. What are the two pieces of advice that you would give to somebody in that space that, let's say, is in corporate America or is working as an employee in a boutique fitness studio?
If you're willing to make that jump, it's not going to be easy. And I think everyone listening or is contemplating that knows that. And be calculated in your risk always. Like I'm not one of those, Jordan, my partner, I would say he's a true entrepreneur, right? I came on store 4 and what I did, people say, hey, it's entrepreneurial what you did. And sure, some aspects, Jordan, he really grinded this out, started in 1999 and grew it to where it is. And he didn't just jump off the cliff. He raced off the cliff. I'm more of like, for those that probably maybe have families, whatever it might be, you don't necessarily want to do that. Take calculated and be careful about your decisions. Be educated. But I think it's where people get hung up is they want that crystal ball moment. I kind of talk about this franchisee sometimes where you've done the research, you've done the validation calls, you've talked to friends, family, have business plan mocked up. Then it's just that moment where you're hoping for that crystal ball moment of like, I just want to make sure that it's going to be fine. And when I tell people, like, listen, you're never going to get that. Like you're never going to get that. And so that in that sense, like once you do the research, you ultimately just have to take the jump, but understand that the true value is, and there's plenty of books on this, where it's in the climb. And you're going to learn more about yourself, and you're going to learn more and evolve professionally, personally than you ever would have being in your comfy, cozy job, right? Never settle for mediocrity. And a lot of these roles, so whether you're in boutique gym, whether you're a corporate America, whatever it might be, a lot of people, you got to understand that those jobs will still be there, likely, even if you go out in a calculated way. Maybe it doesn't work out your first go around. Nothing saying that you can't go back to corporate America. If anything, you probably sharpen your saw. If anything, you probably develop new skills that you didn't have prior to. and it's going to be a real big contribution to your life experience. And so for those that are contemplating that, I know there's probably a few tips wrapped in one. But that's what I would say is, A, don't be scared to understand that it's going to be an incredible learning lesson. And even throughout COVID and everything that's happened while I've been at Stretchstone, even the good and the bad, all of it's valuable, and all of it I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's amazing. Well, Tony, from myself and our listeners, congratulations to you and to Stretchstone on this exponential growth.
Thanks, Carl.
We appreciate you having it as a guest, and definitely look forward to seeing you soon.
Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. That's it for this week's episode. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to head over to our site, local-business-hacks.com, to check out the show notes and send me questions or ideas for future episodes. If you want to grow your business, just like the people you've heard from here, follow Local Business Hacks Podcast and tune in for new tips, tricks, and tactics. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep hacking.